Okay guys, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, or good news if you despise shotguns, but the latest patch for Warzone changed a lot of things for these shotguns, and not just the ones labeled in the patch notes. If you check out the patch notes, you'll actually see the double barrel, the akimbo version, and the Einhorn both got touched, but not in awful ways, at least for the Einhorn, and at least based off of what you see in the notes. Apparently, the akimbo double barrels were bugged, and the last nerf didn't really do much, and the damage reduction wasn't working properly. Even though it was reducing damage, it wasn't to its full extent, so this latest patch fixed that, and now they have been significantly nerfed. They also widened the hipfire spread on akimbo, and as far as the Einhorn, really they only changed the hipfire and increased it so the spread is wider, meaning it's basically going to be a slight bit more inconsistent because of pellet deviation. Not bad, right? Well, sadly, there were stealth changes. I honestly thought we'd be done with this, and Raven has been doing great communicating with the player base for the most part, but my god, what is this? I mean, they went in and changed the base double barrel, how the barrels work for it, they nerfed the Einhorn's ammo attachments and incendiary rounds, and they even went and touched my baby, the combat shotgun. Yes, unfortunately, the combat shotgun was also nerfed in this last update. I have to be clear, some of the things that changed weren't necessarily bad per se. For example, damage barrels on the combat shotgun and a double barrel now actually seem to modify damage, but as a whole, the gun in general is just a lot weaker. So some progress in one area and then nerfs in another, but overall, mostly a nerf to all of them. As for the Gracie Auto, I haven't checked it yet. I don't really want to, but it's possible this may be a two-part video because I still have a lot to check out. But these changes in one were the most substantial ones that I found, and that'll probably affect your classes more than ever. So buckle up, everybody, because this is jam-packed with tons of stealth changes, and bring the tissues because your favorite shoddy class probably won't be nearly as effective as it used to be. And as always, check the timestamps below if you want to jump to a certain point. So let's get into it. First, let's talk the double barrel. The most important thing to talk about is the akimbo nerf. Like I said, they were still pretty strong after that first nerf. They were still ridiculous. It was still a menace and just destroying everything. So now the damage got cut way down, and the main class people ran was akimbo sawed off with either buck and slug or packed powder. So let's talk about those first. The base akimbo sawed off barrel, no other ammo attachments, now takes all 4 shots to kill at point blank, and can still kill in 3 shots though if you mix in a headshot or 2. And the range for this 4 shot is going to be roughly 4.5 meters. It's pretty hard to test consistently with akimbo shotguns, but this is generally the max I could get. As a huge note, I was testing on a non-moving target where I could perfectly line up my aim, so in reality, it's probably going to be very hard to get it to work in those 4 shots at this particular range. You basically have to barrel stuff to be really consistent. When I played with it, I was blown away how bad the nerf was, because there were a lot of situations, even up close, that it wasn't 4-shotting, and I think that's because of the spread. And I'm not one of those guys who is complaining they were nerfed too hard and still trying to down people at 10 or 15 meters. No, I mean, I was like 3 meters away and it was still really hard to down someone. It was rough to say the least. If you run packed powder, it goes up to around maybe 5.5 meters if you can hit those pellets, and buck and slug was roughly the same, but the problem with buck and slug is you lose 4 of your pellets, and even though you can still 3-tap up close with the slug that you get, it's hard to use because the lack of pellets and the random slug make it a bit hard to be consistent with. That being said though, it's probably the best way to run it since you get more firepower from it, and since you have 4 shots, that's still a ton of pellets that are being spread out. Incendiary also works with, again, that 4-tap generally being around the 5 meters or so. Overall, this is not really a good shotgun setup anymore. If you are complaining about dying to this now, you need to reevaluate your playing because there's no reason to. These are basically the Marshalls 2.0. They're only like a slight step up from the Marshalls, which are a pistol, and it's pretty bad. But this nerf, it really hit this thing hard, and I'm okay with it now because it's more like a normal akimbo shotgun should be. Granted, it is a bit inconsistent, and I wish it could at least 3-shot in that 4-meter range most of the time, but it is what it is. I'm okay with it, no more akimbo spam, but if I'm straight up, this is not the best way to run the gun anymore, I promise. If you want the new best setup for it, currently I think that the best setup is probably just the single double barrel with the sawed-off barrel and maybe focusing on accuracy and aim down sight speed a lot. That generally seems to work. I'm going to go and make another video on the next best class. I think this one should be okay, but who knows, maybe something else got stealth changed. But as for more of the double barrel changes that weren't stated, the base double barrel got adjusted, as did the barrels. The base gun can no longer 2-shot kill, like at all. Point blank headshots, no, they don't work. It takes 3 shots to kill with the base gun. Thankfully, no one runs it like that, so you can use the Defender barrel, which basically turns it into what it was with the 2-shot headshots up close, but it still takes 3 body shots, so it's not an amazing barrel. Or you can use the sawed-off barrel, which is probably the best in my opinion because it really bumps up the damage. But sadly, the sawed-off barrel did in fact get a nerf as well. Before, you were almost always breaking 3 plates of armor in one shot. Now, if you hit a torso shot, you won't break 3 plates, and the only way you can is if you hit a headshot. And even then, it deals around 152 points of damage or so, just from eyeballing it. That being said though, the 2-shot range is still awesome. It's still around that 10 meters or so with the 2-shot kill range if you hit your shots effectively. Honestly, it's probably the best barrel, but sadly it isn't good as it used to be, and it's going to be a lot more inconsistent. From my short playtime with it, it definitely felt weaker, and the burn was taking a little bit longer to take into effect with Incendiary, so it's a bit harder to use now more than ever. I wouldn't really worry about the other barrels right now. They do what they say they do, but right now, the sawed-off is probably the GOAT. And no, you can't one-tap headshot with the precision barrel, the headshot damage barrel. It hurts body damage and makes your headshot still a 2-shot, but it's not really ideal for a shotgun, trust me. Also, keep avoiding the ammo types. They don't help. 16 gauge hurts damage, it's not worth it, and I don't think double aught is fixed yet. Oh, and for shits and giggles, try using a Kimbo double barrel with no barrel equipped. It literally takes 5 shots to kill. It's hilarious. It's so bad. Anyway, on to the next set of changes, the Einhorn Shotgun. Sadly, you probably saw this coming, but that insane 2-shot with the birdshot and 12 gauge both got hefty nerfs. So first, let's talk about the ammo types. Before, 12 gauge really extended the range and gave you more damage, as did birdshot, which I'm pretty sure was just bugged. Now, 12 gauge doesn't seem to add any range at all. It's still the same ranges as the base Einhorn, so basically 0 to 4.1 meters and then 4.1 to 5.5 meters for the next range, but it does give you more damage, so that is nice, it is useful. The base gun can 2-shot until 4.1 meters, and with 12 gauge it's the same, and once you hit 4.1 meters, the base gun takes 3 headshots and 3 torso shots, as does the 12 gauge. The only difference really is outside of that 5.5 meters, 12 gauge can still 3-tap headshot, but the base gun drops to 4 headshots. But still, that's not really great. Having to take 3 shots at this range with a 5-round cylinder of shells is pretty rough for anything but one person, and that reload, ew. Birdshot now sadly actually hurts damage. It can 2-tap headshot up close, but it takes 3 torso shots to kill at point blank range, and the range is also reduced from 4.1 meters to 3.2. This is a painful nerf, and honestly birdshot is really just not worth it anymore on its own. Before, the 12 gauge and birdshot ammo types were destroying things in 2 shots at respectable distances, so rest in peace to that. As for barrel changes, the Einhorn also got hit with some. The rapid barrel that gives you a faster rate of fire now hurts range, and it didn't before. And it hurts range by a decent bit. It goes from 4.1 meters to a 2.8 max damage range, so that's a hefty reduction. The big barrel is still around 5.8, the big Clouser barrel, so that didn't really change. Now, because of the rapid fire barrel nerf though, it makes it harder to pick which barrel to use because the faster rate of fire really is super nice to have. So now, what you all want to know, what about Incendiary in the setups we all knew and love? Well, with the big barrel, Incendiary, and birdshot, before, you could easily 2-tap at 23 meters. It was nuts. Now it's down to womp 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 4.2. That's just painful to say out loud. That is a huge nerf, and it's just a shadow of what it used to be. And 12 gauge with the same attachments is at around 5.8 meters, which is basically the same as the base barrel's range, or the big barrel, but you do have slightly more damage, so that is nice. Overall though, man, it's tough to say what the objective best class is now because a lot of these attachments are more in line with each other now, which is probably a good thing. For now, I'm going to say that Incendiary is still probably the best, but I'll go into a deep dive later on with it and see what else works, but just so you know, you're not ever getting that 20 meter 2-shot back, so rip. I think that's it for the Einhorn, so now let's talk about the combat shotgun, which was never mentioned once in the patch notes. First things first, 12 gauge ammo now does not net you that 11 meter 2-tap kill with no barrels equipped. The max damage range for 16 gauge, which is the base gun, the default, is up to 3.5 meters. It's the same as before, and for 12 gauge, it is now 4.3 meters. The nice thing about it though is that 12 gauge still gives you a damage boost overall, so I still think it's the best way to run the gun. After that 4.3 meter 2-shot range, The second damage range extends to 6.6 meters, but it's still a 3 shot to kill with torso and headshots. Whereas before, 12 gauge, the first 2 ranges for it would be 2 shots, and then it would go out to about 11 meters. So now 12 gauge can only 2-tap up to 4.3 meters. That's another womp 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 moment if you ask me. Something nice that did come out of the patch though is that the Chariot barrel and the sawed-off barrel, both barrels that help with damage, now actually do help with damage. It seems like the sawed-off is generally around 15% more damage and the Chariot's more around like 11% or so. Up close and point blank, it doesn't make any difference really because there's definitely a cap on the damage, but in the second damage range, if you have 12 gauge equipped, you can actually 2-tap now because of the extra damage you do. For 12 gauge in the Chariot barrel, it was a 2-tap of roughly 7.2 meters, and for 12 gauge in the sawed-off barrel, it was at around 7.5 or so. It does seem like the 2 barrels also do increase range by a small bit, so that is nice because on 16 gauge, the max damage range went from 3.5 up to 4, and that's basically for both. I'm not sure why there's a difference with 12 gauge and the 2-tap ranges. You'd think they'd have the same, but it does seem like the sawed-off is generally stronger for range and power, but not by that much. But you do get a movement speed bonus as well with that barrel, so I'll take it. The precision barrel for headshots now definitely helps headshot damage, and you can 2-tap headshot up to around 9.5 meters, but it still takes 3 torso shots at that range, and even though it gives you more range overall, it's probably not the best barrel for buckshot on its own since headshots are mandatory. The best 2-shot build I found with spread is probably Incendiary 12 gauge and the sawed-off barrel, which has a 9.1 meter 2-shot range with torso shots, which is amazing, but you gotta hit your shots, maybe use an attachment or 2 for accuracy to help get that tight pellet spread, but overall it's still a solid shotgun. It's just not really as strong as it was, so that's kind of sad to me. But overall, guys, those are the big changes that I could find with these nerfs or these changes. I'm kind of sad Raven didn't really talk about it. I'm sad that they nerfed the Einhorn so much and the 12 gauge shotgun, the combat shotgun. Those two were awesome. I don't really think they needed nerfs that hard. Maybe like a slight tuning, but for the Einhorn, I feel like it's a little over nerfed to be honest. That 5-round cylinder really made a big difference and it really kept it in tune. It didn't really need to 2-shot out to 20 meters. I think that's a little ridiculous, but maybe 10 meters, maybe 8, maybe 7, around that. I don't know. I feel like it's just a little too weak now. It's still okay for a shotgun if you're playing really, really close, as you should. It's a shotgun, but still, you need to be able to encounter those people and not be caught with your pants down. So that's just about going to do it for this video, guys. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of all these different changes. Are you happy about the damage barrels working now? Are you sad about the akimbo double barrel? Probably not. Most of you guys are probably excited about it. Are you sad that the Einhorn got nerfed? Let me know in the comments below. And with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.